welcome to the stage Swen from Light Protocol. Swen, welcome to Athens.
Awesome. So, well, it's great to be here. It's actually my first time in Athens, and I think it's there's no better place to talk about sort of democratic values than Greece, right? So, pretty cool, and it's amazing to see so many people here as well. So, I wanna start with just a quick show of hands. Who sort of has a really clear idea or understanding of what confidential voting means? Raise your hand. All right, so a little bit less than half. So for all those who don't know, no worries, I'll tell you now. So basically, confidential voting is, and it's in the context of, because I've heard there's a couple of Ethereum folks here and non-technical people as well. But it's in the context of Solana governance. You've heard Dean just mention Realms as like one of the governance tools. And so we're in that context, and confidential voting is really just like regular on-chain voting, on-chain governance, but instead of the individual votes being public during the voting phase, you do have confidential votes. So those votes are encrypted, and then in the end, the result of your vote or election gets published on-chain, right? So, and we're gonna, in a few minutes, we're gonna watch I think we're gonna watch a quick demo. And, but before that, I wanna go a little bit into the background and the why behind confidential voting. And just a quick question. Do you have a clicker? Okay, perfect. All right, so the background story. So a couple months ago, I think earlier this year, I think in April this year, two guys reached out to us. That's Max, founder of Mango Markets and Mango DAO, one of the bigger DAOs on Solana, and Sebastian, he's also somewhere here, I don't see him right now, right there, who leads the development of Realms and SPL governance at Solana Labs. And so Max and Sebastian reached out to us, and they asked us, do you guys want to build confidential voting for SPL governance? And we were like, hey, yeah. So here we are. Just for context, the reason why they reached out for us was our main job, actually, is we're building Light Protocol. And we're a small team. One of the co-founders, my co-founder Joe, is there in the background as well. And what we're building with Light Protocol, and if you haven't heard of Light before, is it's this general purpose zero knowledge layer on Solana, which developers can use to build smart contracts. So programs on Solana that have both the regular public state and public transitions, state transitions that you know of blockchains, but they can also have private state and private state transitions. And so one example of a use case of these smart contracts, and we call them private Solana programs fittingly, one use case of that is, for instance, confidential voting. So anyway, back to the story. Max and Sebastian reached out to us. We were like, hey, cool. And then we were like, okay, that's interesting. Why do you want confidential voting on Solana? Why do you need it? And turns out, Mango, as sort of one of the leading, sort of bleeding edge DAOs on Solana, they want to do one thing mostly, which is increase participation in on-chain governance. And there are many different reasons, and I think they're all being worked on, all different parts that basically cause that nowadays participation in on-chain governance is low. But for Mango, for them, they hope that they can increase participation using confidential voting. So what we see here is a visualization of a vote and participation in a recent Mango vote. And you can see each of these bubbles is one token holder, one wallet. And you can see that the majority of token holders, they're not actively participating in on-chain governance. So those gray areas, they didn't actually participate in that vote, even though they have vote tokens locked up in their governance program. And so for Max and for Mango, it's really important. And they think that private governance can help turn these gray bubbles basically into colorful ones. And we learned there are two reasons why nowadays token holders are less comfortable or are uncomfortable voting in public. And there are two reasons. One of them is regulatory uncertainty, and the second one is social pressure. And so with regards to the regulatory uncertainty, just roughly, if you vote in a proposal in your DAO and the DAO makes a decision, are you personally liable for the decision that the DAO did if you participated in the vote? I don't know. No one really knows. So there's a lot of this ambiguity, and this creates friction for people. It sort of deters them from really actively participating in governance. And the second thing, social pressure. Just one quick mental thought experiment we can do, all of us. And it's really easy. It's just imagine that it's election day in your country and you all go to vote. Would you really want to see or want your neighbor or the whole world or the people that you really have very, very different political views with, you want them to see who you are voting for in this election? So probably not, right? So there is this social component of that creates friction if you're voting publicly. You have to vote publicly. There's this friction element that gets added here. So and this leads me to another really key point as well, which is that in the real world, in real elections, voting is default private, default confidential, and we all know there's very good reasons for that. And then there's a couple of other things as well. So one little aspect is security. For instance, there are a couple of governance attacks in theory that you could think of, where the attacker that wants to attack the DAO treasury, for instance, et cetera, wants to manipulate the vote outcome by coercing people to vote a specific way. And so if you're able to vote privately and vote confidentially, it's not impossible, but it's harder to force you to vote a certain way or otherwise manipulate the outcome of the vote before the tally, before the vote has concluded. And in democracy, I think a big part of a well-functioning democracy just fundamentally is free and private voting, because then you can truly be expressing your own opinion as well. So if we forward in the story, a couple weeks later, I met my friend Paul, and Paul is the founder of Teleport. And for those who don't know what Teleport is, it's basically, Teleport is like Uber, but on Solana. And I think it's a very exciting thing, I think personally. But what they're building is this decentralized rideshare protocol. And they have plans. They obviously want to scale this to millions and millions of users, riders and drivers. And so the orchestration of that user base, this has to happen through governance. So governance is a very important part of their product. And so Paul actually independently asked me, hey, could we have confidential voting for this, for Teleport as well? And so I was like, oh, that's interesting. We just spoke to Max and Sebastian about this. So why do you need it? And it turns out Paul mentioned the exact same reasons that Mango mentioned to us as well, for confidential voting, the things that we just touched upon. So we were like, okay, that's interesting. So in the words of the great Tolly, who's going to build the first confidential DAO? So let's play this demo. Awesome. Okay, cool. So I'll just try to do the commentary side. This is on localhost, by the way, so this is running with the blockchain on local Solana blockchain. We're just creating a mock DAO of like 3 members called Aristotle DAO, and we have Alice, Bob, and Charlie, and what we're doing here is we're just setting them up. We're airdropping them some vote tokens, in this case, 1 billion or even more, a trillion Lamports, giving them vote weights, and then we're creating a proposal. And the proposal is, should our DAO use confidential SPL governance in the future? And so that's what we're going to vote for. And this is really to show you that it's really similar. It's very smooth and really similar to a regular voting experience on current SPL governance. And we can see that we're doing the first vote. You can see in the top there, the voted yes. So Alice sees her decision, obviously, but on chain, what you see is in the bottom, you just see encrypted values. And with each vote that's being made, currently that's just Alice, you see that both values, yes or no votes, get updated with encrypted values. So no one else can really see what the current vote count is, the current results, the current vote weights. And so Bob is doing the same thing. Bob is actually voting no, and Bob has a little bit more vote weight, so we just have to see how that turns out with what Charlie does. But you can see as well the same thing on chain. You don't really see, you just see that there's values that are being updated. You don't see the actual values. And then Charlie's also voting yes, so that looks good. And now that everybody's voted, we'll be ending the voting phase. And one thing to say here as well is that those transactions, they're actually also by default private. So I won't go into detail there. We're using zero-knowledge proofs to actually not show like who's actually doing votes, what is the value. It's not only the encrypted value of the vote, but also the anonymous. And obviously, if you're building your own version of this, you can define what's being private when, for whom, etc., etc. So it's pretty flexible. All right, so the last step is really when we close down this voting phase is now we want to decrypt and reveal the result. And we see that, well, yes, it wins. The result is indeed that the proposal has been accepted. Now if we want, we can also look at this publish demo transaction. This is just for demo purposes, really. What we're doing is that we'll see the actual instruction data that stores these values on chain, basically decrypts the encrypted values, stores them, and we're also, for demo purposes, logging the actual vote weights that we have decrypted. So that's pretty much the whole process. And one last thing to say about the decryption as well. So who's decrypting these values, right? Right now for the demo, there's just one key pair, third-party key pair in the UI that can decrypt these values. And so in the end, it's decrypting these values in a production environment. In a production environment, you would then go and decentralize that party. You would have threshold decryption to so that there's multiple parties that are neutral, hopefully, but there's like honest minority of parties that have to basically be good and illicit actors, and then you can have those values be decrypted, and you can sort of do it in a trustless way. Cool. So that's the demo. Thanks. Awesome. So that's the confidential SPL governance plugin. This is a proof of concept demo that is that you, I think I'm having a link as well in the end. So what's next? So the plan for is to run pilot integrations with Mango, Realms, and Teleport. And the timeline for that is for us sometime early next year. And two things I also want to say is that first, the whole thing is open source, so we're building this completely in the public, and we're also building this as a public good. So this means you can really take that code and make it your own and tweak it, and do whatever you want, really. And the second thing is it's also fully extensible on a technical level. So all these other features and things you want to build, you can do that as well with confidential governance, voting, and these private Solana program primitives. So whether that is tweaking different aspects of this voting process, as in like making sure that there's one specific use case if you have validators and they vote on feature activations, right? Maybe those validators you would want to have confidential votes, but in the end, everybody should be able to see who actually voted for what after the tally concluded. So there's these specific edge cases that you can definitely, it's flexible, so you can definitely build these things as well. You can do delegation and more advanced concepts as well. And you can add NFT voting, tokenless voting, all these things that many smart people have already sort of built the sort of primitives for on the public side of voting. Cool. So I hope you found this useful. And for myself and my co-founder Joe and I, we're going to be here for the rest of the weekend. We're super excited for the event, and we want to talk to the DAOs and learn about you guys. So if you're interested in the tech behind this, what's going on under the hood, or if you just want to talk about the world, please come talk to us. We'd love to hang out. Thank you. Sorry? Yeah, I do have time for questions as well, if you have any burning. Otherwise, I'm somewhere behind there. Okay.
Yeah, so if I have a question I wanted to ask, actually, and thank you. This was super, super interesting. One of the things around voting in traditional systems, like elections, is you have every single news channel showing the polling. Is that do you think that that's something that inevitably will happen with other types of voting, or like why is it that we want to know the result while we're waiting, and this is a more truthful method personally, right, where we get to see the outcome at the end versus being influenced by how things are happening?
That's a great question. So, and I don't know why people prefer these things. I mean, it's an emotional thing, and to have these like aggregated preliminary results, hopefully to get more people to care about elections, to make it more of an event as well, maybe. What I know is that the tools that we're building, like they're flexible, right? So like if people figure out, or like if DAOs and communities figure out that they actually want to have partial privacy, or like privacy for the individual, but like sort of certain public elements, they're flexible to encode that as well. So that's Does that answer your question as well?
Totally, thank
Awesome.
you. We have time for 2 more questions if anybody has a question. Don't be shy. Yes, Jana.
Hi, Sven. I enjoyed your presentation. Thank you. So I have a question similar in a way to Dean's. You, at the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned when people vote, can they be held liable for the actions of the DAO? The answer actually is they can be. So it's both a lot of pros and cons with that. But do you see more and more DAOs reaching out to you so that they can enable privacy? For example, I'll tell you, I'm part of Bankless DAO, and I'm one of the mediators there. And one of the biggest challenges that we run into is people getting angry at each other for like, hey, you didn't vote for my proposal. And then they get into like verbal disputes and discord. And okay, it's not that huge, but it creates tension, and I think it blocks a lot of flow in a DAO. And so I'm just curious to hear your thoughts, like, as DAOs mature, do you think like it looks like a hockey stick curve of people implementing this? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. So to your point with regards to the sort of the social altercations and, on Discord, that's exactly what the social pressure thing is. And I mean, I would love to talk, love to chat as well. Maybe there's a lot of things that we can learn, and that's primarily as well our goal here is to you know, put something out there and get feedback, see what the actual requirements are and what people think of it, and then go from there. And sort of fundamentally on a broader scope, if you zoom out with regards to, you know, privacy, but like verifiable privacy, you know, like privacy doesn't mean that everything has to be fully shut dark, but you know, there's these little elements where privacy makes a lot of sense. And overall, I mean, I'm a big believer that as we, and hopefully especially Solana, but you know, I think Solana is one of the driving powers there, but like as we all, as blockchain arrives at a more mainstream audience and more mainstream use cases, there is just many more you know, people demanding or just expecting a sort of default level of privacy, even if it's just a Web 2 level of privacy, which is still better than what we have in blockchain today.
Thanks for the presentation, really interesting. Do you think there are some DAOs where privacy is not a good thing? Like, for example, going to that argument point, sometimes it's nice to know who voted for what so I can have a discourse with them or potentially change their mind. So do you see like use cases or DAOs specifically where you think privacy might be not a good thing?
Good question. So I'm not entirely sure that I know of a specific use case or specific DAO that would want this or need this to be fully public. The fundamental point you're making is very true, right? Which is things should at least be still verifiable. And then I guess there are use cases where maybe you have individual voters or delegators be private, and delegate in private, but then you have maybe a you know, delegation or some other part of the voter set be public, so that there's some level of accountability. What I'm also going to say is that you don't need to have clear text everything or just clear text values to have accountability. So I mean, this is actually something that zero knowledge proofs are just perfect for, which is, you know, having verifiability of things and statements and actions that people did, being able to prove that without actually having to expose to people what it means. And obviously there's this whole range of things where you can have this or that private, this or that public. And I think, to be honest, I think it's going to end up that there's going to be the whole range of different use cases actually end up being implemented. Cool. Thanks so much.